Welcome back, Big Blue Nation, to a winning episode of the Cats Talk podcast. I am your host, Cameron. This is your host, Tyler. We finally got to watch this game against Ole Miss together for the first time. 20-17 upset. Boy, there were a roller coaster of emotions going throughout this entire game. I was jumping off the couch. I was throwing things. I was getting upset at you for calling some things that I didn't necessarily agree with, so we'll get into it here in a little bit. But Tyler, the Cats pull off one of the biggest road upsets in Kentucky football history. What do you got to say?
I mean, look, first and foremost, it was really cool just to be down there with you, Cam, and watch the game. I felt like I was back home, and we didn't have to talk about this over the phone after the game and halftime, all that stuff. So, it was fun to be down there. We had a good time. Tried some of the Cats beer there, which was great. I can't wait for next week when we're actually live and in person here, which we'll get into a little bit later here. But it was a lot of fun. Look, here's my first initial reaction watching the game with you here. First drive, Ole Miss has the ball. They drive down the field. They score a touchdown. I was sitting there. I was like, you know what? It's not going to be our day. We've already talked about it in the last podcast here. We didn't think that was going to be a dub. We thought it was going to be close, maybe competitive, but we didn't think it was going to be a dub. And I was like, well, we just kind of, wet the bed, and that was going to be the game. I had an inkling that was going to be the case. Boy, was I wrong, and boy, was I excited, Cam. I mean, it was great because like you said, the roller coaster was up, but we ended up pulling in through at the end. I mean, there was plays in the middle where they would have a big play, and then their sideline was going crazy, and then I was sitting there, I was like, oh, man, if we could just make them eat turf, like that'd be great. And we ended up doing it, so it was a lot of fun. Look, I mean, I think overall the team here had a good production overall. They had 336 yards overall. With 243 yards passing. We talked about that last week here going into after the Ohio University game. I said that they needed to play like that. They need to go into Ohio University. They need to try to be a little bit more aggressive with their passing just so they get into the flow of things for some of these bigger games. And I felt like that paid off. I think that they came over here or they came in to play Ole Miss and they were doing just that. But it seemed like Brock was slinging the ball a little bit. They continued. They had 93 yards rushing, and a little bit down from what their usual is, but they're playing a little bit of higher competition. I thought it was really well balanced out. They kept the penalties down, which is great. They only had 3 penalties for 30 yards, and they held the ball. I think this was the most important part. They held the ball for about 40 minutes here, 39 minutes and 43 seconds to Ole Miss's 20 minutes. Like it was incredible. We held the ball forever. Ole Miss scored, effectively when they drove the ball down effectively when they had the ball. But for the most part, we were able to control that ball, and that was the difference in this game, I believe. Cam, what did you see here?
Yeah, just roller coaster of emotions throughout the entire game. We kick it off on the very first play. We think Willie Rodriguez forces a fumble on the very first play, jumping off the couch immediately, over there slapping hands, thinking we got the ball. It gets called back, not in our favor, and then they just march down. The defense is tired at the end. Deion Walker and Keyshawn Silver are just walking across the line of scrimmage when Ole Miss snaps the ball. And your first thought is, oh, man, this could be a long day. If Deion's already tired, Keyshawn's already tired. They were already drawing an offsides as they're running in for a touchdown, going down 7-0 in Oxford. Definitely not the way we drew it up, but the team's resiliency to just – on the very next drive down, get 3, keep the game close at the very least. And like we said in the previous episode, the keys to the game was to keep our offense on the field and keep their offense off the field. And like you said, 40 minutes of possession for us, only 20 for them. That's how you go in and you beat the quote-unquote better team. That's how you go in there and you steal one in Oxford, leave with the win. That's how you have Mark Stoops crowd surfing at the end of a game, which if you see Mark Stoops up in the air after a game, more than likely, the Kentucky did something right.
Absolutely. Look, I mean, let's jump into the offense here. Why don't we talk about this for a second? We'll get into the defense here in a minute, but Brock Vandagriff threw for 243 yards. Yeah, he was 18 for 28 completion here. He was averaging 8.7 yards per pass. Had a touchdown, 0 interceptions. He controlled the ball. I mean, this was a different Brock that I felt like we've had all season. It seemed like he was able to really feel himself a little bit more in this offense. Kind of was the guy we were expecting he was going to be from week one here. I was really impressed with the overall play from him, with the overall production. What did you think? What was your sight on the outcome from Brock Vandagriff here?
Yeah, I think that the South Carolina game, I think we just kind of have to throw it out at the moment. We can't really analyze that game any further than we have. You can't look at Brock in the same way after that game. You can't look at the offensive line in the same way. I think that second game against South Carolina, it was more self-scouting. I think we realized what we had and what we couldn't do. They got Bush Hamden and Mark Stoops to talk a little bit and be like, hey, we can't just run traditional 5-step dropbacks. We can't just go, empty out of the gun, kind of like how we were trying to transition to with Bush coming in. So getting back into, feeling comfortable, Brock, I think you were able to tell that. Brock's kind of comfortable in the pocket now. There are still times where he's holding on to the ball a little bit too long. I think there were 2 or 3 sacks during this game where he could have gotten outside the pocket, at the very least a throwaway. But like you saw later in the fourth quarter, Jackson Dart did the same thing, and he was a Heisman frontrunner coming into the game. So you can't expect quarterbacks to make decisions perfectly all the time. But he's also finding great relationships with Dane Key. Dane Key went over 100 yards again for the second time in back-to-back weeks. He's trusting his receivers. I think he's finally getting confidence in himself, confidence that, Dane's going to, if it's an 8-yard stick route, Dane's getting the 8 yards and he's sticking it. So now he can grip it and rip it before he's into that cut. Instead of, how we saw against Ohio, a little bit of Ohio and against Southern Miss where, he was a little hesitant to rip that ball. Now you're seeing everything starting to come out on time. Can't ask for more from Brock. He was one of the main reasons we won this game outside of the defense.
Yeah, look, he threw the ball to Dane Key here 8 times for 105 yards and a touchdown. He threw it to Barian Brown here 5 times for 88 yards with a long of 63. He was finding these guys open. It seemed like he was getting more help out there. This was a pretty good defense. We were talking about last week how Ole Miss's defense, how their overall team was going to be, the most competitive team we played all year, and that's including Georgia. Do you think that the receivers are feeling more comfortable in the offense as well? Do they feel more comfortable with their quarterback? What's your overall vibe now going on with this offense going into a bye week here?
I think we are just comfortable knowing we can run the ball and get 4 to 5 a carry, so we don't have to rely on the pass game, I think, as much as we thought we were going to have to coming into the season, which is good news because supposedly Chip Trainum was seen in a boot a couple days ago, so who knows when you're planning on getting him back or if you are getting him back. Running game was not nearly as good as it had been in the past couple weeks, but Ole Miss also went out during the offseason and paid a good amount of money of their NIL to strengthen up through the trenches. They got the D-tackle from Texas A&M and from Florida State that were both top-tier guys, probably both going to be, some of the first defensive tackles taken off the board come April for draft time. So, just that comfortability to run the ball consistently, I think has kind of freed up Brock to where he just knows that, he's got trust. He doesn't have to be the reason we go 75 yards down the field. It doesn't have to be, as good as it is to see Barian, finally get that long catch like we've been waiting for and talking about. It's still those, 10, 12, 15-yard catches by Dane Key that are keeping these chains moving. Brock honestly didn't get helped out by some of these receivers. Caddis had 2 drops. Dane had a drop. Barian had a drop. I think there was 5 drops by this receiving core. And you said he was, 18 of 28? So add those 5 in there. You're talking about 23 of 28 with about 270 yards. You're looking at a great day as opposed to just a good day like he had. So getting a little bit more production out of these tight ends is probably going to be the next step to unlocking this offense. Because right now we're trying to figure out who to play. We've got, the senior and Jordan Dingle, and then we've got Tucker Caddis, who happened to be in the right place at the right time later in the game to recover that fumble for the touchdown. Because if he wasn't there at that play, we're probably talking about this podcast on a whole different light, talking about how he can't play next week. He missed a couple blocks, dropped a couple passes, hasn't looked good as of late, but he was at the right spot at the right time. Gavin could say the same thing, so it's good to see cohesion starting to come into this offense, clean up some of those, clean up some of the penalties. Berrien Brown's got to keep his head in that moment. That could have been a huge play if he doesn't come back and redeem himself later with that 15-yard or personal foul. I still haven't seen a replay of what he did. So I'm not sure what he did because I still haven't seen anything about it. I don't know if you've seen anything since then either. But 15-yard penalty, you can't get it at that time. It was going to be 3rd and 7, and now you're looking at 3rd and 22. Offense is good. They're not going to be great. It's not going to be what wins us games. What wins us games is this defense and our special teams.
Yeah, I mean, we'll talk about that here in a second, Cam. I think it's important to highlight here. Look, the rushing game was down a little bit. You did mention. I think Brock was playing out of his mind. I think you're right when you say, hey, if the receivers would have held onto the ball, you're talking about the difference between Brock having a great game versus a good game here. I would agree with the full-fledged. I think I would actually say that Brock had a great game, all things considered. He probably could have had maybe another touchdown. He probably could have had another 50 yards, passing, maybe a little bit better completion percentage. But look, it's college football. He's throwing for about what we expect him to do. They're not the Georgia Bulldogs right now. They're not Alabama right now. But boy, they stride in the right direction. So we're excited for that here. Let's jump over to the defense here for a second, though. You brought up someone here. Let's talk about our D tackle. What's going on with him here? He's having some up moments. He's having some down. What are you saying on defense right now?
Yeah, I mean, Deion Walker, he's one of the best players in the country. I think right now they're playing him too much. I think we have to remember this guy is 6'6", 6'7", 350 pounds, and he only missed, I think it was 4 snaps of that Ole Miss game. Like, just in general football, defensive tackles are some of the most substituted positions in football. Usually, even like great defensive tackles play about 70% of snaps in college. Right now, Deion's playing like 92% of snaps. He can't play that much. It's hard to be 6'6", 350 plus pounds, and be in physical shape like that. So while I get frustrated at him for what feels like him being lazy or lackadaisical, getting back to the line of scrimmage, he still beat Keyshawn Silver there, who's not playing nearly as many snaps. On that very first drive, Keon gets a flag for not being on the right side of the ball because he's walking down the field. So I really don't think it's a Deion Walker problem. I think we're starting to show we don't have the defensive tackle depth that we wish we did to be able to substitute as many guys in like that as we do. We got the defensive end depth, with Steven Souls and true freshmen coming up like that. But right now we don't have that defensive tackle depth, and Deion's having to play a lot, which is kind of where you see, those ups and downs of he's making a tackle and a loss for 4-yard loss, and then the very next play he's just not firing off the ball, kind of getting washed down a little bit. But even 75% of Deion Walker is still one of the best players in the country.
For sure. Look, I'm not trying to diss his playing style at all. I mean, this guy's playing at a level higher than I've ever played in my life. I hope the best for him. I hope that he can make it into the NFL and he can play on Sundays and have a great career over there. He's the only person I'm bringing up right now because it seems like it's been like this for a few games, and maybe it is the depth issue. But when I see someone out in the field, especially early on in the game, I expect them to be playing full steam ahead. I don't expect to watch them and be like, well, what's going on? Why didn't we have a play there when there should have been a player there? And he's a big dude. He can clog a lot of holes. He's really the only thing that I see where, like you said, there's a lot of highlights that he has, but there's also a lot of lowlights. I'm just like, if this guy can get maybe even kill a little bit, I mean, we're talking about an unstoppable defense, and it's already pretty good. What are your thoughts with that?
Yeah, I think you kind of have to compare him to Tavondre Sweat from Texas last year without all of the off-field problems that Tavondre had. It's just, when you're a guy of that size and that stature, it's hard to be, especially, it's hard to play at a pace like that, like Ole Miss does. You saw him, he still made plays. Later in the fourth quarter, he's trying to make a play, jumps off sides. It's where we force that fumble, we land on it. You and I are jumping up and down, celebrating, thinking, we got the ball back, game over, it's iced, flag, offsides. So, I mean, there's stuff like that have to get cleaned up. But he's your best defensive player. He's probably the second best Mark Stoops defensive player ever behind Josh Allen. Shout out Josh. But I mean, we can't expect him to do as much as he has. He's still been great this whole season. You can tell he does need conditioning work, which I think for him, at the college level, you don't necessarily see it as much just because he can just out physical everybody. He can just dominate in ways that a lot of these guys, they just can't match with. You know, when he played Ohio, no disrespect to some of those guys up front, but they're going to be sales consultants or insurance agents here in, 2 to 3 years. To whereas you play Ole Miss, you play Georgia, these guys at the very least are hanging on to practice squad signings in the preseason. They're at least landing on some sort of NFL team. But if he wants to take that next step to where in the NFL level he can be as dominant as he should, kind of like you said, comparing him to maybe like an Albert Hainsworth, where you see those flashes.
Whoa, 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 whoa! You did not. I did not say Albert Hainsworth. I did not say that.
Whoa! It's my turn. It is my turn. Okay, maybe not as much of an Albert Hainsworth type. Maybe more like a Vita Vea. Maybe not as lazy as Albert Hainsworth, but not as good as Albert Hainsworth was. We'll get a middle guy right in the middle ground in one Vita Vea, where you see him in the NFL, he makes those splash plays, makes 2 to 3 splash plays per game, but then the other, 40 snaps that he's on the field, you don't really notice him because he's that bigger body type. He's that, 6'4", 6'5", 330, 340. Those bigger body types at the NFL, they do that. At the college level, they do that. Right now, it's working for him because these guys might be tax agents, sales consultants. Nothing wrong with sales consultants. I'm a sales consultant. No offense to you guys. He's a sales consultant as well. But what we're saying is if he's wanting to play consistently on Sundays, that's where he's going to have to take that next step. But as of right now, he is one of the biggest game wreckers in the SEC. And to be one of the biggest game wreckers in the SEC and to have him on your defense in the Bluegrass, I feel great about it.
I mean, look, sometimes you got to take the goods with the bads. Look, you're going to be playing some of these tough teams. We played Georgia already. We played Ole Miss, but we got Texas coming up. I mean, you're telling me you wouldn't want to have a couple plays behind the line of scrimmage in some of those key moments because you know he's sitting there. He's not like he's sitting there like I don't want to make a play. No one has ever said that on the defensive line ever. No one has ever said I don't want to make a play this play. Maybe they have, but they haven't played long after that. Deion's going to sit there in some of these bigger moments, and he's going to say, I want to make this play. And it's going to be a big moment. It's going to be a staple of my Kentucky career. And he's going to jump in. He's going to make the play. And I'm very excited for those big moments. It's just really tough to watch some of those other moments. But look, I mean, overall, the defense played well. They rallied behind each other here. Look, they kept them under 100 yards rushing. They only averaged 3.2 yards per carry on 29 carries. Overall, I mean, there was a lot more passing yards there. Dart went for 18 for 27, 9.7 yards per pass. However, a lot of that was in junk time. I don't want to say junk time. A lot of that was in the fourth quarter when they were trying to go down the field and score a little bit. So
yeah, a lot of that.
But they held them off the field.
Plays, that 4th and 11 toss up at the end of the game, where they get the ball down the field, give themselves a chance to make that field goal, and then the 4th and 8 where they end up scoring a touchdown in the early part of the middle of the third quarter. And then basically, if he wasn't throwing the ball to Trey Harris, it wasn't getting done. Trey Harris went for almost $150. Luckily, for them, Lockdown Max wasn't out there. He wasn't available for this game, or else things might have changed around. But super, super proud about that secondary room to go out there without your top corner one and to be able to lock down Jackson was averaging 400 plus yards a game coming into this game, and he was a Heisman front runner. And he did not look good this game. Unless he was throwing the ball to Trey Harris, they really weren't moving the ball through the air either.
Yeah, this is one of those games I think that the stats don't tell the full story. Jackson Dart threw on paper 18 for 27, 261, a touchdown, no interceptions. Trey Harris had 11 receptions, 176 yards, the touchdown, and a 48-yard bomb. He had 2 passes that were over 40 yards. But if you watched the game, it looked like it was a whole different game. It seemed like the defense was giving them grief. They were struggling. It was scratching for every yard you could get. And there's a reason why they only held the ball for 20 minutes in a full football game. You would have thought that this would have been the first game of the year where they only played 3 quarters. It was a different kind of game. So, Look, I think the defense overall played pretty well. I'll give them an A. Like they did exactly what they were supposed to do against an Ole Miss team. Came in with a bunch of stats. Were favored in a lot of categories here. They did everything. And like you said, I think you take Trey Harris out. You remove Trey Harris. You take our corner. You take Trey Harris out, and you say, hey, we're not playing this game. Equal fight. It's a whole different game. Instead of 17 points, maybe they have 10. I don't know, but yeah, it was a different game. So. Excited. I'm definitely excited to see what we can do next week when we play against Vandy here. I think overall our team did very well. Offense, defense, special teams here. What other thoughts do you have on the game here coming out of this week?
Yeah, just to keep talking about the defense, I think we've got to bring up Octavius Oxendine. He had 2 sacks, was named Defensive Lineman of the Week in the SEC. He's got to get some praise here. We were a little shocked during the offseason when he was listed as, a backup. That was kind of something that was a little head scratching. We were wondering, what was going on. He's finding his way back on the field, and he's making the most of his opportunities. 2 sacks in a game against some very viable tackles that Ole Miss has. Granted, he was going up against a backup because they didn't have their starting left tackle, and I'm pretty sure they won't have him for this week either. So he's got to get some recognition. Jamin Pop Dumas Johnson, he was great as well. Same thing with Derek Jackson. I mean, these guys are just... Our front 7, I feel so comfortable with all of the time. Deion Walker leading the way, Trayvon Ripka, Keyshawn Silver, Ox outside, J.J. Weaver made some great plays, almost had a 4-sack fumble if it wasn't for Deion being offsides. We finally got a ball to bounce our way when Gavin Limpsett fumbled into the end zone and Caddis fell on it. Well, there was still 3 or 4 that didn't fall our way, even in this game. You're talking about the kickoff to start the game, that gets called back. The one with Deion Walker, that gets called back. I mean, there's still so much meat on the bone for this team. It feels weird to feel like we dominated that game and we only won by 3. For some reason, I feel like we dominated a lot more than what the scoreboard says. The defense was suffocating.
Yeah, just to add in there really quick, we only went 4 for 16 on third down. Now, we made up for it on third down, like going 3 for 3, but only 4 for 16 on third down. We just beat Ole Miss, who went 1 for 10 on third down. They went 2 for 2 on fourth down, but 1 for 10. We beat them 4 for 16, so.
Those 2 fourth downs were huge, though. You're talking about that. One was a straight touchdown to give them 7, and the other one was to keep them in the game, where we thought, right before that, they had the 3rd and 11 play where they had to review the catch. It gets overturned. You're thinking, 4th and 11, this defense, I trust them. We're good. And then you see Jackson Dart rolling out to the right, just throwing up a prayer. You're like, man, I think we got this. And Christian Story kind of gets caught in, I'm not sure what was going on. He was, backpedaling. I don't know if he could find the ball. Luckily, he at least came to, a little bit of his senses and, made the tackle because, a lot of guys in that situation maybe try and he's off balance. He tries to go for the ball, jumps up, misses it. There was nobody behind him. So at the very least, he allowed the play, made the tackle, kept us in the game. What happens is college kickers miss all the time, except for ours. I don't want to put the jinx on them. Alex, I love you, buddy. I don't need you. Don't put the jinx on me.
Alex, do not be listening to this podcast.
Yeah, don't listen to this podcast because I don't want the jinx. But Alex has been money. This guy, he lines up from anywhere from 55 in, and you feel great about that kick going in. How many college kickers can we say that about? I know Ole Miss can't say that about theirs.
Yeah, I'm not really confident about kicking games in college for the sole fact that it's just absurd that you put them on the right hash as far over as you do in the first place. And then you're taking the fact that these kids are anywhere between 18 and 21 years old in front of, especially in the SEC, in front of 50 to 60,000 fans. You're expecting me to make that kick? Are you sure? So I don't hold anything against the kickers, but Alex has been great so far. I'm excited for him. Hopefully we can continue that success here. What else? Anything else you want to include with this take here for this game?
Yeah, I think if we can just kind of break down those last 2 drives of the game, Kentucky's final drive. We get the ball at our own 14. There was 4 or 5 minutes left in the game, I think, when we get the ball back. Try to complete a pass to Dane Key. That goes incomplete. 2nd down, we run the ball, only get 3 yards. You're looking at 3rd and 7. Fred Ferrier, who I've been bringing up on this podcast, I've been trying to get him some more playing time, trying to get him to be, that third receiver, because right now Jamori Macklin's really not making much of an impact. And it seems like Fred has been getting open. Fred drops that ball, would have been a first down, and you're thinking, man, 4th and 7 now, we just dropped the ball for the first down. You know, as a Kentucky football fan, your brain is kind of trained to think the worst is going to happen. You see Mark Stoops, 4th and 7, you see the offense stay on the field, you're kind of taken back. You're not used to Mark, making a judgment call like that. Even Lane Kiffin said in his post-game press conference, he's like, yep, that's something that he never does. So they weren't expecting it either. 4th and 7, they make the play call. It was first read was supposed to be to Dane Key for about an 8-9 yard dig route. Brock sees one-on-one coverage with, the NCAA football 25 cheat code he is, Berrien Brown on a go route. We complete it. Berrien goes for 60-plus yards, makes a great move at the top of his route, stays in bounds, gets like that extra 20 yards there, puts us in a great spot. Now we're 1st and 10 from the 17, and then hand the ball off, and guess what? Our best run play of the game is that very next play. We get it down to like the 4 or the 5 from Demi Sumo Karnbay. That was his best rush of the day. And then from there out, it's a little bit of luck. I will be honest with you. Gavin runs it in, gets hit at the 2, fumbles. If that ball bounces another way, we're sitting here and we're outside Kroger Field with pitchforks trying to find Gavin. We're riled up, we're upset. Luckily, it falls into the waiting hands of Pattis, who was just as surprised as I think we were, because, at the moment we couldn't see where the ball went. We just saw the ball, we got shot up in the air, and then they're showing the touchdown graphic at the bottom, and you're like, you just get jubilation.
Yeah, I mean, it was all drawn up part of the play, Cam. It was like the ball got squeezed out, it caught in the end zone. It was part of the play, it was how the script was written, okay?
The way it was executed, it looked like it was a design play. And I'll give Gavin the benefit of the doubt. Not really, but I'll give him the benefit of the doubt to say that he was planning on doing that. He was planning on fumbling right to Caddis. It's weird that he can catch, a fumble, but he can't catch a pass thrown right to him. But I guess that was the more important of the others. So glad to see it happen. Ole Miss gets the ball back. You're up 20-17. That high-powered offense, you would think, they had time. There was plenty of time. You would think any other defense besides our own, they've got a good shot of going down and winning that game, especially when we get them into some of those situations that they converted on. We get them into a 3rd and 11. They catch the ball. They think it's a first down. It gets reviewed. Nope, no catch. Okay, now it's 4th and 11. 4th and 11, we're all feeling good. We're thinking this defense has been nails all day long. The only time they were not nails was the 2 times, like you mentioned, on 4th down. 4th and 7, they give up a touchdown to Trey Harris. And in this 4th and 11, Jackson Dart just rolls out and heaves something up. Christian Story gets caught in no man's land. Does make the tackle, so luckily for that. But, I mean, this defense to, come back. A lot of defenses would sit there and, that'd be their, man, we gave it a good chance today. That's just kind of how the ball is going to roll. No, this defense, they didn't do it once on that drive, just come back from adversity. They did it twice. Jackson Dart gets sacked, rolls out, holds on to the ball for way too long. J.J. Weaver comes, finishes the sack. He got held earlier in the play. It didn't get called. He was getting held a lot this game. Didn't get called. Deion's always getting held. So, I mean, that's par for the course. A 6'6", 350-pound man, he's going to get held a lot. And then the very next play, Jackson takes off running, gets about 2 yards, gets hit, fumble up in the air. We dive on it. I'm running outside my house. I'm thinking game's over. And then I hear you, whoa, there's a flag. Because I didn't see it at the time, live action. I didn't see it. Deion jumps off sides. They're getting another chance at the game. They check it down on the very next play. Luckily, great open field tackle out in the boundary. Those are tough to make. Even in like a video game, those open field tackles one-on-one are very tough to make. We make the tackle. We force a 48-yard field goal attempt from the far right hash. That's a tough kick expect a college kicker to make in that situation. 4th and 8, 48-yarder.
I didn't get your opinion here.
Yep.
This is a tough call because we were just talking about that young teenage or the older teenage, young 20s athlete who's going out there in a coliseum and they're expected to make this far right hash kick or far left hash kick, either or, especially in this kind of point of the moment. And this is a 48-yard kick. This is not an easy kick. I know on TV it looks pretty simple. These NFL guys do it routinely. You got people who spoil the game like Justin Tucker and some others who can make it, with ease here. But this is not an easy kick here. I'm not saying that this was the wrong call by Ole Miss, but do you think that Ole Miss should have gone for it here? Obviously, hindsight 2020, they missed a kick, but put yourself in the shoes here. You're the coach here. Ole Miss, they've only held the ball for 20 minutes all day. Is this the opportunity to kick the ball and go to overtime, or should they have gone for it and kept grabbing it? Because they just had that long play. Maybe they do get another play. I don't know. What do you think they should have done here?
I think that was the right decision. That he was 1 for 1 earlier in the day. He had made, I think this is his 5th year in college football. He had played for Texas A&M before Ole Miss. If it was roles were reversed and I was Mark Stoops, with the trust that I have in Alex Rayner, I'm sending them out there to take us to overtime. And plus, if you think about the couple of plays they had before then, they had a sack, they had the fumble that was called back because of the offsides, and then they just had a 3-yard check down. So you were looking at 3 plays where you had gotten a yard or 2. So I think you're just kind of taking your chance. Not really taking your chance necessarily, but you're just giving what you think is the best chance to win, getting your field goal kicker out there, having him kick that, and that would give us, maybe 40 seconds left with the ball. You're putting us in a spot where we got to hit another shot over the top to try and, end that in regulation if we wanted to, or it's just a brand new game. And a brand new game like that, usually, the quote-unquote better or more talented teams win those games if you let it get that far. So I think he was just trying to get Ole Miss to overtime, trying to limp to the finish line, get them there, and then, let Trey Harris, let Jackson Dart kind of take over. So I think it was the right call. Of course, like you said, hindsight 2020, maybe you should have tried something else. Maybe you just don't throw that check down on the far right hash. College hashes are a lot wider than the NFL. Those are harder kicks than the NFL kickers have to make. Maybe you just take a halfback draw. You get the same amount of yards, but, you're in the middle of the field instead of having them pull it cross body. That cross body is the toughest kick for a kicker to make, especially he's got to bring that kick back in another 15 yards. And I think that's why you see him overcompensate so much and kick it so far to the left. He's trying to kick it cross body. As a former kicker / punter, that's the hardest thing to do is kick it to that far across body. Kicking it, with your leg to the other side or straight up is easy. Lane Kiffin always goes with the analytics. He is an analytics guy. So I'm sure that's what the analytics said. Just didn't work out for him that time. So I'm happy for that. Go Cats.
Sure. I mean, look, the defense showed a lot of resilience there. I mean, they could have very easily played a little more cushion defense and allowed, maybe another first down or 2. Now you're talking about a game that's a little bit closer to the field goal. I agree. I think the proper play there on 3rd and 9 here is to, if you have to check it down, but check it down in the middle, because if you're not going to make the first down, you're kicking the football. And you tell your guys that too. You had plenty of time on the clock there. There was a minute left on the clock on 3rd down. Kentucky ended up calling the timeout with 53 seconds. I think we wanted a shot for a drive, thinking the kick would have been made, but it was what it was. I think, like we talked about, I think there's a lot of resilience on the defense. They've been playing well all year. I'm excited to see what we can do for the rest of the season here. This game gave me a lot of hope. This was that steal of a win that we were talking about earlier this season that the Gamecocks ended up taking from us. Nice to see that we stole one back. So let's see if we can go down the stretch here. We got some games coming up. We need to make sure we get the wins that we're supposed to win here. And I think that puts us in a shot here to be competitive down the stretch. Cam, any more thoughts about this game leading into next week here?
Yeah, I think we have to talk about the fake injuries on Ole Miss's part. Some of those just blasphemy calls. It's got to be changed in college football. Lane Kiffin's getting an extra 5 timeouts per half with these injuries. That's how he's using them. You can tell. Jackson Dart's in the headset, and he looks over to the running back.
Go down.
I mean, there's nothing more obvious than that. And if that one is the one that's not going to get flagged, I don't know what's going to. It's a hard thing to police in college football because you can't just look at a kid who, might have rolled his ankle the wrong way and say, hey, that's a flag. I think you're faking it. So I mean, it's got to be a little. You can't. But I mean, there's got to be something that we can do. I mean, maybe fine Lane Kiffin after the game for this because that's coming directly from him, or that's coming from the OC. Somebody's got to be held accountable for that. You can't be given an extra 5 timeouts per half because it makes the game a lot easier if I can sit there and if you give me 80 seconds to draw up a play versus a certain defense versus 40, that's going to help out a lot. Something's got to be done about that. Other than that, the Cats go into Oxford, steal a game that nobody thought they were going to. They were 17-point underdogs going into this game. Ole Miss was thinking they were just going to ride these little waves and get into the college football playoff pretty easily. As we're recording, they're taking it to South Carolina. Really, it kind of just makes you wonder, if we would have had that full game against Southern Miss, what we would have looked like a little bit differently against South Carolina. I know we can play a lot of those what-if games, but if they switch up that game against South Carolina, imagine being 4-1 right now with a 1-point loss to Georgia and beating Ole Miss on the road. How much differently we'd feel about this team if that game was not there. Like we're thinking what, top 10 team at the moment with a 1-point loss to Georgia. I mean, I think
we're in the top 25 for sure. I would say top 20, maybe 15, maybe top 15, maybe top 50. I don't know if we're top 10 yet.
Yeah, but I mean,
I'd love to have confidence, but
I mean, you figure your one loss is to the number 1 overall team, and then you beat number 6 on the road. That'll get you pretty high in the AP polls. I'm looking forward to what this team can do for the rest of the year. I think, at the very least, they have brought back all of Big Blue Nation's excitement back to this team. I think you'll see that Vandy game is usually one that's not attended that well. Kentucky and Vandy are not really known for their football programs, especially Vandy, of course. But we'll be there in person next week. We will be there. We will be allowed 7:45 kick time. I'm looking forward to, being in person for the first game that we can see together, being able to dissect the whole field, see the whole all 22 tape instead of seeing, just what the broadcast shows you. I think that always gives you a nice little insight to the game as well.
Yeah, look, I'm excited to be at the Vandy game next week here. It's going to be exciting. We got some good seats. If there's anybody out there who's going to be at the game and they want to come join us, we'll be walking around. Come find us. It's not hard to miss this guy. He sticks out like a sore thumb sometimes. He doesn't look good at all.
We'll be pulling off the Kentucky trifecta next weekend. Big Blue Madness on Friday night. If you guys see us out there, stop us, say hi. Saturday during the day, we will be at Keeneland, and then we will be heading out from Keeneland a little early, getting to some of the tailgates, hopping around, saying hi to whoever we see. We will be down there in full support, getting ready for the Kentucky-Vandy game. Kentucky's taken Vandy lightly some of the past couple years. They lost 2 years ago. They beat them last year. Vandy's been good this year. I know we're going to dive deeper into it earlier into next week. We'll dive deeper into it. But Vandy beat a good Virginia Tech team to start the season. At the moment, they're leading Alabama at halftime of this game. If that doesn't get you ready for the game, I'm not sure what will. Vandy can't be taken lightly. You got anything else to say, Tyler, before we wrap up this podcast?
Yeah, look, I'm excited. I think the momentum is on our side. We're on a 2-game win streak. We just beat a really good team. Yeah, Mark Stoops needs to go in that locker room. He needs to make sure he keeps that team focused going into next week here. Look, we're going to break it down here in the next podcast, so if you're a fan of the show here, please give us a thumbs up, a 5-star rating, whatever platform you're listening into this on. We appreciate your support. Please share with your friends and family here. It's something special in Kentucky football, man. We're very excited for this, so stay tuned. We're going to be releasing another podcast here in a couple of days, breaking down the upcoming game against Vanderbilt. There's a lot of excitement around that. If you're down in the area, come join us. It's going to be a lot of fun. Yeah, go Big Blue.
Go Big Blue.